Welcome, everybody. My name is Gear Fisher, and I'm the CEO, co-founder of Onform, and I'm excited here today to dive into how to use our new 3D data feature inside Onform. And with me is none other than my other co-founder and our CTO who heads all of our engineering and product efforts, Krishna Ramachandran. Krishna, how goes?
Going good. So excited to do this with you, Kier.
Most definitely. So we're waiting for people to pile in here, but today we're going to cover off on something that we have collectively as a team been working on for almost 3 years. It's definitely been one of the single biggest efforts that we've been through, but we're so proud and excited to show the world what we have done. And the crazy thing is it's taken us quite a while to get this done. We tried to be very careful and deliberate about how we went about it, and now it's out there in the wild. So it's been fun to see the reaction. We're going to walk you through the whole system. Let's go ahead and move on here to the next screen and talk about our agenda for the day. So we've been through the introductions. Yes, it is recorded. We have other staff behind the scenes, so if you want to use the Q&A tool to ask questions, please do. We're going to have plenty of time to do some Q&A and discuss and get all your questions answered. And today we're really going to focus on simply the how-to. How do I put this feature to use? Inside the app. We're going to give you a walkthrough of getting 3D to work, what data tiles are available, how to make it part of your actual workflow during a lesson, and just talk about all the things related to 3D and 3D data. Now, we've had visualizations out there since February or so, but we've been tuning our models for the last 8-10 months to get them accurate and to get them reliable and get it fast. Those are just hallmarks of how we see all of the functionality in Onform. And something that we want to kick right off into is a little bit of background on how we built this model and what we've done. And to do that, we're going to take you through what's known as our model card, and nobody better than Krishna to walk us through that. So Krishna, I'm going to stop my share and let you take over and give us the background through the model card information.
Perfect. Thanks, Kier. As background, this is a technical document that explains the details about our model. What is the input? What is the output? How performant is it? And such. Now, this is something that all companies in the AI space have started to do. Companies like Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, and others have extensive model cards that go into all the details about how their AI models function. And we wanted to provide the same level of transparency to all of our users. So we took the time and wrote up this document, and I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough just now, but I encourage everyone to go read this on your own time separately. Our whole goal of providing this model card is to make sure that you understand how our models are trained, and that you, more importantly, find that we are being transparent about how it performs, and that we hope builds trust in Onform's 3D solution. So at the very top of the model card, we talk about its summary, what it does. Essentially, you can feed it face-on swing. Down the line, swing support is coming soon. But in a multicam situation, you can have face-on and down the line video. And we talk about how we pull in data from both angles and present it to the user. We give recommendations on where the camera should be set in relation to the golfer, what height the golfer should be in relation to the camera, and such. Now, these recommendations are things that we think you should follow. You should try and adhere to them as best as possible to get the best results from our AI model. As with any AI system out there, you can always trick a system into giving you bad data, but then you're kind of forcing the AI system to give you bad data by tricking it. But if you follow our guidelines, largely, you'll get good results. And we go over what those results are and how accurate those are at the very end of this document, which I'll cover off shortly. We talk about our 3D skeleton. What are the different key points that we show in the 3D skeleton? What is our definition of a torso, a pelvis? What is a turn? What are forward bends, side bends in biomechanical terms? And more importantly, how these torso orientations are computed. So we go into specific details about what is called a Cardan sequence and the order in which these numbers are computed. So the order in which these numbers are computed or these calculations are done is really, really important when you compare different biomechanical systems for calculating 3D. So we specify our order as rotation, followed by forward bends, followed by side bend. And it might feel like technical jargon here, but the key takeaway here is that we've taken immense amount of measures to make sure that our way of calculating these 3D metrics follows the well-established biomechanical standards out there in academic literature, in industry literature, from renowned experts in this space. So that's the key takeaway from what's written out here. We also go into details around how the swing phases are computed. So we say how we calculate the start of the swing, how we detect it, what is our top of the backswing. We are working to have club tracking soon, so we will have impact positions identified soon as well. But we talk about how we identify these key points in a swing, and then from those numbers are bubbled up to the user. And finally, the most important part of this document is where we go into specific details around how our model was evaluated and what the results are. And we did two sets of evaluations here. One, we tested this extensively against our internal motion tracking system that Gio's going to give you an overview of. It's an OptiTrack 3D marker-based systems where different markers are placed on the human body to give really, really accurate 3D tracking data. And here, we get really good results. So this is a table that shows our errors. And the way we define error is a mean absolute error. Key takeaway here is, across every frame in a swing, we look at the error on a frame by frame basis, and then we average it, and then we present it to the user. So that's what this table is showing here. For the turns, like pelvis turn, torso turn, and the bends and the side bends, our numbers are within 5 degrees of what the true value is, as determined by the OptiTrack 3D marker-based system. Now, these are really good results, right? And this is not just for one swing. This is across 190 swings from 3 different athletes of different abilities. So high handicapper, medium handicapper, and professional athlete. We then said, hey, this is working really well against our internal system, but how does it work against well-known 3D systems that are already in the wild that people have been using all along, right? We weren't happy with just benchmarking it internally. We wanted to also go out externally and test this thing against different other 3D systems. So we tested this against a Polyhemus electromagnetic system, the likes of Boole 3D and AMM that you might be familiar with. We tested this against Qualisys, which is another 3D-based, 3D marker-based system that's well used in the scientific world and in the hospital medical world. And we tested this against Gears, which is a commercial product that's available for getting 3D data. And here too, we get really good results. We're within 5 degrees for pelvis. We're under 7 degrees for torso and the bends. And the sway numbers are also really, really accurate, right? Within 1.5 to 2 centimeters of what the true values are. Now here, when you're comparing against external systems, it's really, really important to make sure that the calibration of the two systems match exactly, that their metric definitions and how they compute these numbers match up exactly. Because if they don't, you might get different results from the two systems, right? So that's really important to keep in mind. We consulted and worked with experts in this field to look at the different systems, how they were calibrated, and then compare the results. So that was a monumental amount of work that our team put in. We traveled all over the country to make this happen, and we didn't want to put out our results until we did that work first. And lastly, this document goes over some of the trajectories or the shape in which these values are put out by Onform. And we compared the shapes of the data for turns and bends for every part of the swing throughout the swing between our system and a polymer-based system. So the table or the column on the left is showing the shapes for Onform's 3D system, and the data on the right is showing the shape of the graph for the electromagnetic system. And the key takeaway from this that I want all of you to have is that the results and the shape of the results match perfectly well across both our AI-based model as well as an external electromagnetic gold standard system. So yeah, that's a quick walkthrough of our model card. We're one of the first companies to put this out there. We encourage others to do so too. We hope that this helps you gain trust in what Onform has done to introduce its AI model. And then over to you, Gear, to take this forward.
Thanks, Krishna. I just want to point out those graphs there are showing 5 swings all plotted on top of each other that came from our resident tour pro, Sam Saunders. And we had to make 5 7-iron stock shots and as consistent as possible. And so those are the results of just that. Now we've done that type of graphing and data for hundreds upon hundreds of swings. So this is just a sample subset. Don't think that we only tested against those 5, but we have data for literally hundreds. But again, the model card is out there for everyone to understand more detail of what we did. Thanks, Krishna, for going through all that. Our goal, as always, is to make sure that, our coaches can trust what we are putting out there. And we're not going to put something out there that we, don't have full confidence in. Does that mean it's going to be perfect every time, in every scenario, in every lighting case? No, we fully acknowledge that, but we're off to a great start. Let's put it that way. So I wanted to show a little bit more, and here's the next page. This is just some photos from our lab. We have an 8-camera infrared and 4 RGB camera lab that we have built with OptiTrack. It's an incredible system, and OptiTrack is the company that makes gears. I think in the golf world, most people are familiar with gears as really the gold standard tool, and it continues to be. Of course, the problem or challenge is that unless you have a $50,000 setup and you get somebody with the markers on, it's difficult to use. So our system is really far more accessible, and the beauty of it coming from just a single camera means you can use it on the range, on the course, virtually anywhere. Now, of course, you have to use it with precautions. Those precautions are outlined in our model card, getting proper angles and recording, etc., decent lighting, but you'll get some great results. I also want to point out too, before we dive in too much further, our competition strictly forbids you from actually comparing their software to any other product. To their credit, and I'll just say it by name, Sportsbox has done some really good stuff in this area. Let's not sugarcoat it. They're certainly been around the longest and doing some really great work. But check out section 10.c in their terms of use. You're strictly prohibited and forbidden from comparing their system to any other. And we felt that was something that we didn't want to do. We encourage you to go try this against other systems. And in fact, we'd like you to share the results of that with us, whether that's publicly or privately. We are here saying, look, we're going to be working on this for years to come. Our first effort is a very good effort, but it's only going to get better from here. And we encourage you to go to try it with other systems that you trust. And again, our entire goal is to build confidence and trust with you. And so this is something that we feel really strongly about, and hence the details on our accuracy in the model card, etc. All right, without further ado, let's get to the actual meat of this thing and do little 3D demos. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll dive into my iPad. Should we stop? Are there any questions maybe we should take real quick before we get too much further? I'm just going to check in with our team here and see if there's anything.
Yeah, a couple of questions that came in already answered. I think you can. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll just start going at it. I'm going to just dive into how to use 3D inside our app. A couple things. Let's just go and take this very first swing here. I'm going to click on it, and what you see here is the computed 3D on the right side and the video on the left. Now, I want to remind everyone a little tour of the video player, right? So these red dots signify the start of the swing and the top of the swing, and then eventually we'll have the impact, etc. Down at the bottom are the computations for the 3D, and you'll see those numbers change as I swipe along in the video player here. And then we actually compute those numbers all the way until the lead arm is essentially, or the trail arm is essentially horizontal, and then we basically stop because it's not terribly interesting to know the very end of the swing. And now that information, first of all, is only visible to coaches. When we talk to coaches out there in the wild, I got two reactions. One, oh, I can't wait to see it. And two, are you going to show this to my students? Oh my gosh, I don't know if if I want my students to see all this. They're going to get really wrapped around the axle. So we said, great. This data is only available to a coach. A student will be able to see the visualization, but they are not exposed to any of the data. We wanted to protect you from getting a million questions that you may not be prepared to answer about some of the data that they see here. In addition, you can control the layout. You and or the student would be able to control this on their own as well. When I click the layout button, this is not just 3D specific, but for our video player, we can go one panel view, and in that one panel view, I can have the video and I can get to the 3D here. If I never click the 3D button, then I never see 3D in the first place. I want to make that really clear. You don't have to have 3D computed for every single swing. You may not want it. It may take too long. It may interrupt your workflow. We're always extremely careful to not interrupt the workflow in a lesson. We want to keep up with as fast as you move and not make you look foolish standing there in front of a student telling them to hang on a second while you try and figure out what's going on with the software. Mostly we want to get out of your way. But as you do, you click 3D, and you'll get the numbers computed, but you can adjust the layout as you choose. You can even hide the metrics entirely, okay? So even though we have a 3D and the 3D visualization, the metrics will disappear in case you just don't want to bother showing that with your student. Now, in order to show the student the data, you're going to have to record a voiceover. And when you hit record a voiceover, it will pull these numbers into that voiceover so you can refer to them as needed. But I wanted to be very clear about how to kind of interact with the video and the player right there. Now let's talk more about the numbers, and I'll get into some of the other tools in a second. But first off, this is a scrollable set of data tiles. We've got side bends, forward bends, sway, thrust, lift, as well as the rotations here. If I click on these numbers, it opens up a control panel. And so again, here's the representation of the panel of the data metrics. I can put my finger on any one of these and drag it in whatever order I want. I can also turn each tile on and off as I so choose. So maybe I really just want to focus on turns and sway. I can turn off everything else simply by deselecting each tile. So we've made it customizable for you, and that setting is remembered from video to video. There's also a couple of key things here. For the translational metrics especially, it's important to set the height of the person. And by translational metrics, those are what we would call sway, thrust, and lift. Things that are actually measured in centimeters or inches, and simply need to put the height of a person in here. Those things are fairly sensitive to the actual height. But you will get numbers no matter what, even if you don't change this. You'll get more accurate numbers if you do set the person's height. Also, you can adjust the units, right? So metric units or imperial, centimeters or inches, whatever you may fancy in that case. And then I also want to bring your attention here to the body metrics, this information button. When I click that, we've got a great support page that kind of wraps everything all into one in one place. And it talks about best practices for recording. It talks about which metrics are being measured and how they're being measured. Some fancy words like these, the various planes when it comes to the body, as well as the customizations that I just mentioned. So no need to spend too much time there, but that is also where you can find a link to our model card that Krishna just went over inside these articles as well. And you can see all that on our website in our support section. We made a whole 3D section too. Now, when I click done here, I also want to note that you can adjust these metrics tiles straight away right here. So if I really want to bring torso lift over to the left, I just long press on it and drag it over, and it'll remember that from swing to swing. Now, I really like the 2-panel layout better, so I'm going to bring that up. And I just want to also call your attention to a couple things here. These are on the iPad, visible on the iPad, down the line or face on and overhead. So very easy to switch views. When the toolbar is closed, I can adjust the position of the 3D and rotate it wherever I want. And when I do actually want to draw, I can turn on the drawing panel, choose whichever tool I want to use, and draw as normal. And when I close that up, you'll notice those lines stay in full 3D. And what they're doing is basically finding the nearest joint as you draw and putting them on the same plane as the nearest joint to your line. So you'll find some really cool creative ways to mark up the 3D side. And as well, up here on the 3D AI magic button, as we call it, this is where you'll find some great shortcuts for doing things like turning on hand path tracking, which will follow the hand path through full 3D space. There is other things like tracking slide and sway. For down the line view, you can automatically draw the swing plane, and we'll be adding more really handy shortcut buttons inside there to make it so that it's easier and easier to use these tools in your daily workflow with lessons and voiceovers. Now, I also want to go ahead and close this. And what I'm going to do next is actually delete this video off of, I'm going to remove it from cache. This is a feature. So you can see when I first open this video, how long it takes to generate 3D. And on a single video, this is on a newer iPad, it's roughly 10 seconds. Now that calculation happened entirely offline. That happened on the device. It does not need the cloud to do that. You do, of course, need the cloud to download the app, and it will initially download our 3D model. But once that's downloaded from the internet, your 3D computations are done entirely on the device. And this is a huge critical factor. Number one, it takes advantage of the power of your device. So, you know, the newer the device you have, the faster it's going to go. If you're using an iPhone 13, is going to take quite a bit longer than an iPhone 16 or 17. Also, you can certainly use this like at any place, you know, on the back of the range. You can use it for low handicappers, for high handicappers, however you see fit. But some of the challenges that we had were making this work so fast and efficiently on a mobile device. Let's pull up another one. Krishna, anything I missed right there that we should call out?
No, that's all really good. Maybe mention the fact that this is only for face-on swings currently, and down the line is coming soon.
Yeah, great point. So let's go ahead and open up this video of Sam out on the golf course. So right now, to get data, you do need to capture the video from face on, and the golfer needs to be roughly 50% of the view of the screen. And I want to draw your attention to something. So I'm out playing golf with Sam, and I'm holding the iPhone in my hand. Now, you don't have to have the device on a tripod, and that's part of what something we worked so hard on was making this available not just in a lab setting or with tripods and a fancy setup, but you can use this on the course. However, you should pay attention to what you're doing. But notice I really want to show some of the tolerance here. You can see that I'm actually moving the camera. See how the angle him changes a little bit just because I can't hold it perfectly still. We've done a lot of fancy math stuff to make it so that these numbers will be calculated properly, even if you're not holding perfectly still. Now, if you're moving all around and coming from totally different angles from swing to swing, well, buyer beware. But we've done a lot of work to try and make this consistent and as accurate as possible, even when holding it by hand. Notice it's well lit. I'm holding the iPhone roughly hip height and trying to keep it level with our leveling tool. But even that easy of a capture, I can derive some great data. And I want to show, I'm going to go to the top of the swing where he's about 106 and at the top torso and 47 pelvis. I videoed him on another hole here. And check it out. Here we are at the top of the swing, and he's 104 and 49. Only 2 degrees off on torso and 3 on pelvis. On 2 completely separate swings, filmed totally separate time, and me literally just holding it in my hand without a tripod. So the consistency that you can get is actually quite remarkable, given the fact that there's all these different variations in distance away from the student, lighting, holding it by hand, motion, etc. Christian, anything to add?
No, I mean, that's a great point here. And we've done a lot of work to test it where 2 cameras are side by side right next to each other, and we get very consistent results as well in the face-on view. So more to the point that I think the larger takeaway from all this is that try to be as consistent as possible in where you place your camera from student to student and with the same student, because ultimately you want the same consistent results when you're comparing, an improvement in rotation numbers or sway or whatever it may be.
Yeah, obviously the more consistent you're set up from swing to swing, the better the consistency will be. So in a lesson setting where you might have the cameras on a tripod in a fixed location, that's the ideal way to compare swing to swing. Now, another thing that I forgot to mention, and that we do have a little note here in our metrics selector, the target line. What's the target line for all these numbers? Well, the target line is essentially with respect to the ankle line of however the student's setting up. So these numbers are with respect to the ankle line. If you drew an imaginary line between the ankles, that sets the 0 line for our rotation calculations. That's pretty consistent with how other apps and literature is using for this type of application as well. So there's a couple of different examples. I also want to show that we also can do 3D in a multicam environment. So here we have a student. This happens to be just taking some swings in our lab. We've got a down the line and face on, and you'll note we recommend that the primary camera, in this case, the number 1 angle is the primary, is down the line. We recommend it being face on. It doesn't have to be, but it should be. But you can get the same 3D calculation from the dual angle and have that visible and useful as well. So here we have, a dual angle, simultaneous down the line, face on captured with our multicam system. And we can also get 3D from that as well. Pull up one more that you can see. We have a whole series of tour pros inside our reference content folder. Here is Jonathan Vegas, and you can see that you can pull up and find reference sort of number for pros as you wish. Just open one of those up in terms of comparisons to make your comparisons even more objective now when working with students. Now, that said, we're just getting started here, folks. There's a ton more that we have in plan. One of the things that we get asked is, do you have tour averages, numbers? What should I be? We're working on a whole host of supporting documentation and functionality to help you put this to better use in your lessons. Things like reference comparisons, not just to tour pros, but to, mid-handicappers and high handicappers. Other features, as Krishna mentioned earlier, bringing in the club so that we have the club represented in 3D, club head tracking, impact, being able to jump to the various points of the swing, the P points, P4, P7, etc. and so much more in store. Our belief is that if we can bring objective metrics to the equation here, the equation of the inputs, so the body, and measure the output, the launch monitor data of the ball, you'll have more information at your fingertips, either to confirm what your eye sees or to help you discern when sometimes you have those cases where you're just not quite sure what's happening during a swing. So our goal is to bring objective data at your fingertips for the entire part of the swing and the ball and make it so that it's fast and accessible all within the app. Let's stop for a minute if you have any questions.
Yeah, we have a few questions that rolled in. We've already answered some of them, but these are good ones to tackle live. To get all of this info, does the swing need to be captured on auto detect? Here, you want to take that one?
Good question. So what they're asking about is the different modes in our camera. The short answer is when we first came out with our 3D visualization, it did have to be in auto detect, but now you can record in any mode. So you can manually record it, use one tap, use auto detect, or any of those modes in our multicam scenario, and we can get 3D from all of those. So when you're manually recording a swing, essentially what we do is as long as the video from a manual recording is under 15 seconds, we actually read through the video and find the swing automatically. So you don't need to trim it down. That's something that you've had to do in other systems to just isolate the swing. We use some really nice fancy ways to go and find the swing inside a manually recorded video. Now you can't take a 3-minute video with like 12 swings in it, but you can do a manual recording of one swing and we handle the rest automatically. So short answer, no, use any of the modes that we have available in the camera. You can also import video from external sources, but you got to be very careful that you're importing them. They have to be in a 120 or 240 FPS. And just because it's sometimes not super clear, when you go into the camera, the lovely front-facing camera, we'll go to the rear-facing one here. You can see some of my desk exciting stuff. The FPS and resolution setting is right here. So you can choose the different setting of the cameras. You can choose the different modes, one tap, manual, and in those modes you can go all the way in different like 240 or 120. We used to support 60 FPS when we were first doing some visualizations, but we found that to get the most accurate data, we felt better about making sure the requirement was 120 FPS. And those are just a couple of notes on the camera recording modes. Other questions?
So another good question. Can you use the 3D for a putting stroke? I can take that one. Yeah, we currently only support full swings in our AI model, although putting and short swings is on our roadmap. So it's coming. We don't have a firm date yet for that. All right, another question. Will there be an option to have a dynamic line across the shoulders and hips? That's a really good visualization question. We'd love to hear more from whoever posted this. It was a attendee that didn't share their name, just to understand what the use case would be for that. Is it more for visualization purposes or is it more for analysis? We'd love to learn more about that. So if you could just drop us an email and reference that question, that would be wonderful. Right now, you can have static lines. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, that sounds like it's a very common gears visualization when people are using gears is the dynamic line, so certainly doable. And we should take a note there too. We do not currently show shoulder rotation, and I wanna bring something up here just to make it super clear. Since we're talking about shoulder rotation, I have prepared this little visual. And essentially, we had done a lot of testing on shoulder, but decided we weren't accurate enough, and we want to give it a little bit more time before we turn on shoulder rotation. So anyway, we have pelvis and torso. But I also wanted to mention in our skeleton, how is torso visualized? The model card describes what's actually being tracked, but visually what's happening is this red line and these little dots, if you can see my cursor, these little bulges, if you will, represent essentially what is the torso angle in our skeleton. And because the shoulders can rotate independently or separately from the torso, the shoulder turn is generally 10, 15 degrees higher than a torso turn. But if you draw, visually, you can see that the torso here is less rotated. This is the top of the backswing than the shoulder line. And I just kind of wanted to call that out. If you want to understand where this torso turn number is coming from, that's the visualization. Now, I also want to caution everyone here too. It is not sufficient to simply draw a line and project that line into the XY plane, the flat plane on the ground, as if you were hovering over the student and you see them rotate and you draw a line and you go, gosh, it looks like 90 degrees, but Onform is saying 84. Well, that's back to this Cardan sequence and how you calculate the rotation from factoring in side bend and forward bend as well. It's actually quite complex, and you can Google all you want about how to compute rotations. But it's a little bit of a misnomer to think that when you just look and project the rotation of a 3D system into an XY plane, that should be the actual number. So I just want to caution you to be careful about that. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can keep going.
Yeah, there's a few more questions. Maybe we can take a couple of more questions, and then you can go into that and then finish out the rest. Will you add club head trace similar to hand trace? I think we covered that earlier.
That is on the list. Yes, coming soon.
All right. And then do you foresee moving to an avatar representation?
Well, we're glad you asked, Krishna.
It's something we're evaluating and working on. In our initial, when we sent out this app to a bunch of coaches to test this, we heard great feedback around the 3D skeleton, just that it helps the golfer focus on their skeletal movement and not so much on the avatar and how it makes them look. But yeah, it's certainly something that's on our roadmap, and we are actively working on it. And eventually it'll be a toggle within the product, and the user can pick whether they want the avatar representation or the skeletal representation. So I think that's a key workflow feature that we'll be adding to the product.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Like I said, we're just getting started. I want to share my screen again here and talk about a few FAQs and some computer vision stuff. First one that we hear a lot is, why are the skeleton arms or knee, should have been legs, not knees, sorry. Why are the skeleton arms not straight during the swing? Well, the reason is, I pulled up a skeleton, is that we're using joint centers to represent the skeleton in our model. And so here's a skeleton with perfectly straight arms, but the reality is the joint center is actually inboard. Same with the leg as well. It's the joint center is here where the ball of that femur is represented. And if you draw a line from there to the knee, same thing. If I draw a line from the joint center of the shoulder to the actual elbow, it's always bent. And you're going to notice that in our representation, that the arms will sometimes look a little more bent, even if the person's got a perfectly straight lead arm at address or at 90 degrees. So just be aware of that. That's something that we have kind of debated on better visualizations. The avatar representation versus our skeleton representation might address that, but I wanted to bring that forward just because that's been a question that we've already heard from a handful of folks out there. Now, the second one that we get, and this goes into a little bit of AI and computer vision, is how is this model really working? How can you possibly know where the shoulder is when it's occluded by the neck in the backswing, right? A very common discussion point amongst AI when doing, amongst coaches when talking about AI is, how can this possibly work, and how can you possibly know where something is when it's occluded or hidden by the body? And the camera in a one angle scenario can't see where the shoulder is. Well, first of all, we totally agree. You can't see all of the joints in one simple angle at any given time. However, because we have trained our model on the full 3D motion of a golf swing, and it knows it's a golf swing, we can essentially predict, or if you want to use the word guess, that's fine. You can very accurately guess where that shoulder or maybe where that hip joint is because of the other information that we have. We know it's a human, we know they're doing a golf swing, and we know where the joint was just before it got hidden. And an example of what I'm trying to talk about, in a fairly simple explanation, is if I have my iPad here and I swipe my hand back and forth behind it, at no point can you see my hand behind the iPad. But I can assure you that I could probably calculate with sub-centimeter accuracy exactly where my hand is at any given time as I'm moving it behind that iPad. Now, if I didn't, if I said to you, hey, I'm going to wave my hand, can you calculate where my hand is? Pretty easy. You can all see how that could be done. I can see the velocity of my hand just before it goes away, and I can see it pop out on the other side. So for any given point in time, I can probably predict where my hand is. Well, now imagine doing that in a far fancier way and doing it across thousands of swings and across millions of frames of video, and having a computer model know that you're trying to make a golf swing. So it understands what these motions are in full 3 dimensions. And just because it can't see your shoulder as you rotate, it takes an incredibly good guess when that happens in the swing. And that's how we can reconstruct the position of joints, even though they're occluded from the camera. Now, multiple angles certainly can improve that and can add further data, but I wanted to address that we don't have to see the joint at all times. The fact that we can't see it is part of what makes this problem so challenging from a computer vision standpoint. But I hope it's clear, or maybe a little bit more understood with my simple example of my hand waving behind the iPad, that just because you can't see it doesn't mean you can't make a very accurate prediction on where the hand might be or where the joint might be. Our third one, I just already covered. I jumped ahead, I guess, in the presentation and talked about the torso and the shoulders. We do intend to bring the shoulders in there. And we did cover a little bit about the target line being the line of the ankles at address, being our 0 point. Krishna, once again, back to you for any Q&A questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, a few questions, 3 or 4 questions around the impact this is going to have on the pricing for the product. Will there be changes to the subscription model for all this new functionality? If so, when will these go live? What are the long-term implications for Academy subscription costs? And how do you upgrade for this, since that has not been written about? Do you want to take that, Gear?
Yeah, well, I think this is as good a time as any to announce our plans here. We're actually working on a new 3-tiered pricing structure. We'll actually introduce a cheaper version, a cheaper tier for coaches that are maybe part-time or light users. We'll have our existing tier that gives you access to most of the features that you've been using and have been having access to. And 3D will be part of a new Pro tier subscription in the coming months, and that will be priced at $59 per month or $5.99 per year. Still significantly less expensive than our competition, but reflects the fact that all the hard work and efforts that we've been putting into this, as well as other functionality that we will be announcing in the coming weeks, that is not there yet. Things around making the app even more useful for you on your day-to-day coaching. So we'll have a new 3-tiered price structure, $20 at the low end, or $19.99 at the low end, $39.99 for our middle tier, which is essentially what's there today, and $59 for our Pro tier. And we'll have a lot more information about that and announcements in the next few months. But we wanted to keep the product accessible. It's a hallmark of ours to make it affordable and accessible. And in fact, we even wanted to make it easier for people who aren't necessarily full-time professional coaches to use the product as well. Hopefully that helps meet you where you are in your particular business. And our Academy packages will all reflect bulk discounts like they do today, and you can certainly contact us and we can put together a great package for you with substantial discounts for multi-coach academies.
Great. Another question around 3D accuracy. How much is accuracy improved when recording with a second camera, or is it not really necessary? So in our model card, we lay out that we pull in thrust data from the down the line camera, and all the other data, the bends and the rotational numbers and the sway and lift numbers are computed from the face-on angle. When we have a down the line model ready, we will take the best data from both and present it for you, depending on the quality of the camera angle and a bunch of other proprietary stuff that we're working on to improve the accuracy of the results. But bottom line for now, you can stick to face on. If you have a multicam setup, for sure, you can use a down the line camera to get thrust data because that's a lot more accurate from down the line. But otherwise, face on will serve your needs for the foreseeable future.
Good question.
And then this is an interesting question about the model card. I noticed on the model card recommendations for clothing, when you performed internal and external validation, did you advise the participants to wear something specific or just the guidance, not loose and lighter color? Great question. Gary, you want to take that on since you did all the data collection stuff?
Yeah, so we learned over really the course of a year, clothing was important, but not the most important. The general recommendation is that don't show up and expect if you're wearing a long dress and a big puffy parka, we can't even as a human figure out where your bones are if you're wearing something that's really blocking that. Now, it's essentially, if you can tell from your camera where a person's legs and arms and body, torso, etc. are, then our computer model will find it. So we did test different things. Early on, we found that hoodies were very difficult for the computer model to tell a human head from the hood on wearing a hoodie. So short answer, I think there in general, the recommendation is, something that is easily or well lit and that you can see the person's extremities easily, our model will see them as well. And if they're wearing dark clothes, it's best to have really good lighting. We did a lot of testing in our black bodysuit with the markers, but we have extremely good lighting in the lab. And then we would also have people test in very poor lighting. And it's actually, the model is quite tolerant to the lighting situation. But again, best practice is well lit. That actually also brings up another question. And our model card mentions this as well. Ideally, you have the golfer in frame and you don't have any background noise or other golfers in the background. That's ideal. Now, that's also very rare to get. If you're teaching on a range, there's probably going to be people behind you. We've done a ton of work to try and isolate the key subject, your student, in the model so that the 3D calculation is done from the expected person in the view, even though there might be other humans in the view in the background. For the most part, it will tolerate people in the background quite well as long as they're a little ways in the background. But just be aware that there's a lot happening under the covers to try and make sure that your student is the one that we are seeing and calculating from, and ideally it's best to remove other humans from the background of a video. How do you get this? Well, as long as you update your app to our most recent version, make sure you've updated your iOS to the latest 18 or the very latest iOS 26. Search the App Store for Onform and tap into the listing, and you can tap Update. That requires that you have the newer version of iOS, and it'll be there. You simply record a video, tap the 3D to compute the 3D in the video player, and it will compute the 3D for you and give you the visualization. So it's basically right out there, and you just need our latest version to give it a try. All right, Krishna, we're coming up on our time. I know there's other Q&A in there that we will get to, or you can certainly email us at support@onform.com with any questions. again, this is the very first version that we've come out with. We are super proud of it. We encourage you to go try it out on different handicap users, pro users, different backgrounds, indoors, outdoors, small people, tall people. All of those present different challenges for computer vision. And we just hope that you will let us know how it goes. There's actually a little thumbs up, thumbs down button inside the video player that you can use. And we wish you the best. We'll have a lot more in the future on this. And thank you for your time today. Appreciate you showing up. And as always, thanks for your support. We're going to continue to make great stuff to help you make your athletes great. All right, signing off. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.